A strange thing has happened to our generation. Never before in human history have people been so aware of themselves. We analyze our childhoods. We study our attachment styles. We label our traumas. We dissect every emotion we feel. In theory, this should make us wiser, healthier, more emotionally intelligent. And yet, anxiety is rising. Overthinking is everywhere. Millions of people today feel trapped inside their own minds. Why? Because there is a hidden danger in becoming too self-aware. A danger that psychologists like Carl Jung warned about long before social media existed. The illusion of total self-knowledge. Modern culture tells us that the more we understand ourselves, the better our lives will become. So we begin a journey of constant introspection. We question our motives. We analyze our reactions. We replay conversations in our heads. At first, this feels empowering. But slowly, something strange happens. Life becomes less about living and more about observing yourself live. You start watching your own thoughts the way a scientist watches an experiment. Psychologist Carl Jung believed the human mind is far too complex to ever be completely understood. In fact, Jung warned that excessive introspection can cause a person to become trapped in what he called the labyrinth of the psyche, a place where the mind studies itself endlessly, without ever finding peace. When awareness turns into rumination. Think about the last time you made a small social mistake. Maybe you said something awkward. For most of human history, that moment would have passed quickly. But today, it replays in your mind for hours, maybe even days. You ask yourself, why did I say that? Did they think I was stupid? Was that my insecurity talking? This process is known in psychology as rumination, and rumination is one of the strongest predictors of anxiety and depression. Instead of experiencing life, the mind begins interrogating itself. You become both the criminal and the detective in your own psychological investigation, and the interrogation never ends. The Gen Z self-awareness explosion. No generation has been exposed to psychological language like Gen Z. Terms like gaslighting, trauma response, emotional triggers, narcissism, attachment styles. These concepts used to exist mostly in therapy sessions. Today, they dominate platforms like TikTok and Instagram. On one hand, this is progress. People are becoming emotionally literate. But there is also a psychological side effect. When every behavior has a label, people begin diagnosing themselves constantly. A bad relationship becomes trauma. An argument becomes emotional manipulation. A personality flaw becomes a psychological disorder. And suddenly, instead of simply being human, people begin to feel like psychological problems waiting to be solved. The paralysis of too much reflection. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once wrote that too much reflection leads to paralysis. When the mind analyzes every possibility, it becomes afraid to act. You see this everywhere today. People overthink texts before sending them. They rehearse conversations in their head. They analyze their personalities, their boundaries, their emotional patterns, until eventually, they become exhausted by their own awareness. Imagine trying to dance while constantly watching yourself in a mirror. Every movement becomes awkward. Every step becomes forced. That is what hyper-self-awareness does to life. The shadow. You cannot fully understand. This brings us back to the work of Carl Jung. Jung believed that the human mind contains a hidden side known as the shadow. Parts of ourselves we cannot fully see. No matter how deeply you analyze yourself, there will always be aspects of your psyche that remain unconscious. Trying to completely understand yourself is like trying to see the back of your own head without a mirror. The more you chase total self-knowledge, the more frustrated you become, because the mind was never designed to be fully transparent to itself. Self-awareness is not a mistake. In fact, it is one of the most powerful tools a human being can develop, but like all powerful tools, it can become destructive when taken too far. Too little awareness leads to ignorance. Too much awareness leads to mental paralysis. Wisdom lies somewhere in the middle, understanding yourself enough, but not so much that you become trapped inside your own thoughts. Because the purpose of life is not to endlessly analyze your mind. The purpose of life is to step outside it and actually live.